You catch someone's eye across the room, and your whole body betrays you. Your heart slams, your face goes warm, you lose the end of the sentence you were saying, and for one ridiculous second, that one person is lit up brighter than everyone else alive. It feels brand new. It feels like it's happening only to you. It isn't. That exact feeling has been firing inside human beings for at least 300,000 years, on every continent we have ever set foot on. But we tell ourselves a strange little story about that romance is basically modern, that our ancestors just grunted, traded a goat, and moved in together to survive the winter. That real love, the head-over-heels kind, is a luxury we only invented once life got soft. It is one of the most confidently repeated ideas about the past, and the evidence takes it apart almost completely. We have their love poems. We have their graves. We even have the chemistry still running in your skull right now. Start with the story we all absorbed. Marriage back then was a business deal. Your family traded you for land, cattle, or peace with the neighbors, and feelings had nothing to do with it. And if that's how people paired up, then real romantic love must have come along much later. So in 1992, two anthropologists, William Jankowiak and Edward Fischer, decided to actually check. They pulled the field records of 166 cultures from every corner of the planet, and they went looking for one specific thing. Not weddings, not arrangements, the feeling itself. The head-over-heels, can't eat, can't sleep kind. They found clear evidence of it in 147 of them, nearly 90%, and the missing ones weren't proof that love was absent. Mostly it just meant nobody had thought to write that detail down. These were societies with different languages, different gods, different rules about everything on every inhabited continent. And the love-struck feeling kept turning up again and again. At some point, you stop calling that a cultural invention. It starts to look like standard human equipment. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. A survey of feelings is soft. Anybody can claim a culture felt love. I want something harder, something in their own words. Fair enough. So let's go back 4,000 years and let one of them speak for herself. In the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, archaeologists pulled a small clay tablet out of the ground. It was written about 4,000 years ago, closer in time to the building of the pyramids than to you and me. And when they finally read the little wedge-shaped marks pressed into it, it wasn't a receipt or a law or a king bragging about a war. It was a love poem, written from a young bride to her king, and it is not shy about it. She calls him honey. She calls him her heart. She tells him to take her with him to the bedchamber, and she begs him not to leave. 4,000 years ago, someone sat down, ached over another human being, and pressed that ache into wet clay so carefully that you can still read it today. And it is nowhere near the only one. Ancient Egypt left behind stacks of love poetry that would not sound out of place in a modern song. They wrote about hearts pounding at the side of someone, about being so sick with longing they took to bed. One poem flatly calls lovesickness an illness that no doctor and no spell can cure. So sit with that. These people 3,000-4,000 years ago felt the precise thing you feel. The obsession, the ache, the way one specific person suddenly outshines an entire room. They just carved it into stone and papyrus, instead of typing it into a phone at 2 in the morning. Which raises a bigger question. Why is this feeling everywhere in every era, no matter how different the culture? Because love was never really invented by poets. It was built by evolution, hundreds of thousands of years before anyone could write a single word about it. And evolution built it to solve an emergency. Human babies are hopeless. A newborn horse is up and walking within the hour. A human baby needs months just to hold up its own head, and years before it can survive 5 minutes alone. Raising one is a brutal, relentless amount of work. That work is far more survivable with 2 committed adults than 1. So nature needed a way to bolt 2 people together long enough to drag a fragile child through those first dangerous years. And the tool it reached for wasn't a contract or a law. It was a feeling. A powerful, slightly unhinged, glue-like feeling. And we can watch it happen. Neuroscientist Helen Fisher put people who had just fallen in love into a brain scanner. The moment they thought about the person, a deep, ancient part of the brain, the same reward system that lights up for food and cravings, flooded with dopamine and lit up like a slot machine paying out. That is the giddy, obsessive thinking about them at work high. It isn't poetry, it's circuitry. Then, as the fireworks settle, quieter chemicals take over. Oxytocin and vasopressin build the calm, deep attachment, the kind that keeps two people side by side for decades. First, the spark to pull you in, then the glue to keep you there. And here's the part that should give you chills. Your ancestors ran the exact same two-step program on the exact same hardware before language even existed. So no candlelit restaurants? No dating apps? No roses at the door? What did courtship actually look like out there? Honestly, you would recognize almost all of it. Let me put you in it. It's evening, tens of thousands of years ago. For days you have been quietly working a small shell, drilling a hole through it with a stone point, so you can string it on a cord. Tonight, by the fire, palms sweating, you finally hand it over. That's not me being poetic. In Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found shell beads exactly like that, deliberately pierced to be worn, roughly 75,000 years old. Somebody made jewelry to be noticed. Some things really don't change. And courtship wasn't only gifts. It was showing off. Being a good hunter, a clever tool maker, the one who's funny around the fire. That evening firelight wasn't just warmth and safety. It was the original social scene, where stories got told, where people sat a little too close, where a very different kind of spark caught. It even left us the heartbreak. The same ancient poems that gush about love also sob about losing it. Rejection, jealousy, wanting someone you can't have. So if you have ever been turned down and genuinely felt like the world was ending, don't be embarrassed. You're running software thousands of generations deep. Now that old myth didn't come from nowhere. There's a real grain of truth buried inside it. For a lot of history, marriage genuinely was about alliances, property, and family strategy. That part is completely true, but watch how people twist it. A practical marriage does not cancel out love. The two were simply running on separate tracks. You married for the alliance, and you might still fall hopelessly for your spouse. Or worse, for someone you had absolutely no business wanting. Love crashing into duty! That collision is the plot of nearly every ancient myth, play, and tragedy we have ever dug out of the ground. And that is the real giveaway. The oldest stories humans bothered to save and retell are stuffed with forbidden lovers, furious gods, and people burning their whole lives down for someone they weren't allowed to have. Nobody spends thousands of years telling tragic love stories about a feeling that doesn't exist. So the true history flips the myth on its head. Love wasn't invented recently. What's new is expecting to marry the person you're in love with. The feeling is ancient. Building an entire marriage on top of it, that is the fresh experiment. And every one of us is still a test subject in it. And there is something quietly staggering in that. The flutter when your phone lights up with the right name. The stupid grin. Reading far too much into a single text. None of it is modern. None of it is yours alone. It is the same signal that made a young bride press honey and my heart into wet clay 4,000 years ago. The same chemistry behind two people laid in the earth, still holding on to each other, who once chose each other out of everyone alive. Falling in love can feel like the most private thing that has ever happened to you, but it might be the single most human thing you will ever do. A feeling so old, so useful, so stubbornly wired into us that it has outlasted every empire, language, and invention we ever came up with. You didn't learn how to fall in love. You inherited it, handed down unbroken from the very first humans who ever looked up across a fire and felt their heart do something they had no word for. So the next time it hits you and it makes you feel a little ridiculous, remember, you're not being silly. You are being about as human as it is possible to be, running the oldest program we've got. I'm genuinely curious what you make of this one. What's the oldest love story you actually know? And are we better off marrying for love? Or was the old way onto something we've lost? And if this made you look at that fluttery little feeling differently, there's a whole series here doing the same thing to the rest of your everyday life.